Let's talk business, the economy, and the dairy industry. We're being joined in the program by the Operations Director, Manufacturing Industry in Canada, Mr. Olufemi Johnson. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, when I have conversations like this and with the experts, what I like to do is to have the experts' dashboard a proposition or presentation as to what exactly is the state of that particular space. Say, let's say the dairy industry. I came across a document that says Nigeria produces just about 10% of its dairy consumption or dairy consumption needs. The rest is imported. What data do you have so that we can piggyback on that to build on the conversation?
Well, I tell you, when it comes to numbers, there's no point looking for numbers, because the fact is that when it comes to dairy and dairy industry, we're not anywhere in Nigeria. And what I mean by that is that apart from maybe some peasant farmers, you know, like the ones we see a little bit here in the north, those that do know and all of these things that we take in the north, which is the only thing that represents milk. The fact is, as a society, we don't have milk. Our kids don't have milk protein. We didn't grow up with milk protein. What we generally call milk in Nigeria is actually not milk. They're creamers, you know, and they're not qualified to be called that. The fact that we patch them with that name milk, it's bastardizing, and it's wrong and illegal, because most of these organizations, these big multinationals that run around us here, would not label those creamers as milk, because there's a global standard for what milk is. There's a World Health Organization standard for what milk is. You don't make milk. You only bottle it, and the only thing you do when you get milk is that you pasteurize and you bottle. The moment you take milk and you start to separate its components, you're taking the butter fats out, you are concentrating it to milk protein or to whey protein, or you are breaking it into different constituents. Whatever derivative you then have, you cannot continue to label as milk. Now, I fortunately lead about the largest processing operations of dairy in North America right now. And in the last 7 years that I've been thoroughly exposed to that global space, and specifically dairy, I've been in manufacturing for the past 25 years. And I started here in Nigeria before relocating abroad and focusing a lot on the dairy industry. One thing I can quickly say, which is what I've already emphasized, is that we don't have it. There's no dairy space. We don't have milk. There's no milk in this country. We didn't grow up taking milk. Our kids are not taking milk. What we call milk, if for example you go anywhere in the world and you go to maybe an hospital, somebody's recuperating, a doctor will say, oh, take milk and all of that. In Nigeria, a doctor will say that as well. But what we then go to buy are those things that are in cans, that we dilute, you know, and take. But the reality is that those are just reconstituted creamers. So talking about data, I went through a little bit of looking for data as well, but even that is not even trustworthy, because if you have milk, you'll see it in urban areas, you'll see milk around us. The only time if you have ever taken, the closest you would have to milk, I don't know how pasteurized or how good quality it is the nunu that you see mainly in the north. You know, all those things we put in cans, they should not even be labeled as milk. And that's something that myself and a few other Nigerians that are experts and exposed in this level are beginning to look into.
Mr. Johnson, the statement is literally an industrial offset, because literally all of us felt like we've been taking milk, or now you're saying they are creamers. Thank God you're the expert. So what exactly, myself. Yeah, so what exactly, is it that we don't need it, or we can't produce it, or we lack the ability to produce it, or we have a knowledge problem? Help me break it down.
Well, for me, I think it's, first, the infrastructure is not there, just like there's no infrastructure in most other aspects of our economy. Traditionally, every tribe around Africa, we relate to milk, north, south, east, west, everywhere in Africa. I remember when I was younger, that there's something that you get around, I think in Ilorin, something that Yorubas will call wara, which is a derivative of milk. So any culture you go into traditionally has something to do with milk, either goat milk, cow milk, whatever. So, but as a country, we do not have any policy or structure guiding milk production. I'll give an example. In most developed countries, US, Canada, Europe, Middle East, everywhere you go, Saudi Arabia and all of that, they have clear policies on milk production, milk processing, and to ensure that children actually get access to milk protein. I'll give another example. For example, during the COVID, in Canada and for most of the developed world, milk production was declared an essential service because protein has to go on. So the problem for us is first and foremost, what is our national or even at the state level policy towards milk protein? Because every country has got one where you are trying to ensure that, because that's the cheapest and easiest protein for children to grow and for adults to, the older people, the very old people to get calcium. And there has to be a policy around it. We don't have one. And that's why generally, if you look at that space, we can label creamers as milk, and we can take that all our lives and continue to tell ourselves that we take milk, because we don't. And so for some of us, we need to start that discourse, and that's part of what I'm working on. That's part of why I'm back in the country in the last few days.
Mr. Johnson, so I think
we need to start some kind of framework in this country that then leads to foreign direct investment, where people then start to say, now the most difficult piece of it, if I may just go on a little bit more, is the supply chain structure. Because when you're doing milk, it needs to be cold from when you bottle it to when it's consumed. You know, and I'm not talking about just powdering, making it into powder. I'm also talking about taking the liquid milk, the kind we see when we travel to Europe or we go to North America. So the most difficult aspect of it is developing that supply chain. But it's not impossible. We can start in more modern areas and all of that. And then getting government to support the production, distribution, and also the affordability, just as it is done in most Western countries. For example, in Canada, in the retail sector, you can't just put prices on milk, you know, because it's considered essential. And you see that everywhere in the world. So first, we don't even make milk. We don't even produce milk. We don't have dairy farms per se. And then we get all these reconstituted...
All right, Mr. Johnson, because of time, if I may come in, I know you have a lot to say. I wish we had more time. So we're going to talk about the subnationals and how they can be part of this, because I'm looking at the Nigeria Dairy Policy 2023 to 2028 that covers the fact that there has to be, the government's objective is to increase domestic milk production, because according to the government, approximately $1.5 billion is spent annually for the importation due to production deficit. Where does the subnational come in here? Because the federal government at its best, at the agricultural level, Ministry of Agriculture, now we have Ministry of Livestock Development. So this conversation is apt. How does the subnational come in to help? Because I kind of feel bad that I've never taken milk. I've been taking creamers.
Well, it's painful, I tell you. But yes, and I agree with you, and that goes back to how we can encourage ourselves to start to invest. Because now this policy document still has a lot of work to do. But I must say that the present administration of Tinubu seems to have at least created an environment where we know exactly where we are. You know, before now, economic indices have been manipulated under the table. We're defending the Naira, we're doing subsidy. You know, it was not clear for us. You know, now we've removed all of that. We know where we are. We can only develop and grow more. So that will encourage investors in the sense that you know what you're going into. You know that the basic economic principles would apply to the system. US is trying to increase oil production. So there's a war somewhere else. You can relate that immediately to what would happen within the Nigerian economy. Unlike before, where economic indices cannot be easily translated because there are some people manipulating things for their friends or to their own people. So the focus now should be how to try to drive investment into that sector, you know, and to also start to reorientate the population for us to understand fundamentally that we don't take milk. Milk protein is the easiest and cheapest source of protein and the easiest and cheapest source of calcium for the elderlies, and that we don't have it in our society, so that those that then start to invest and start to make real milk, get milk from the cow, pasteurize it and bottle it and distribute it. People start to understand that this is what real milk looks like, and that's what we need to move into.
All right, Mr. Johnson, two quick questions. Are you opening shop, or have you opened shop in Nigeria?
No, I'm not opening shop. Of course, I'm driving. I'm definitely working towards investment, and it's at an advanced level into into creating a revolution within the industry.
Please,
and part of that would have to be reorientation and also to challenge the status quo, especially this idea of, and when I say it's something that I'm passionate about, this idea of labeling creamers as milk. It's actually illegal. Most of these companies are European businesses. They can't label those things as milk in their own home countries.
Okay, that's why
I make creamers, I manufacture
Johnson,
creamers and all of that. So, yeah.
My apologies, totally out of time. That's why we needed to open shop. Though we're talking about FDI, you'll give us that FDI. So we'll be following you up to make sure you open shop in Nigeria. And I don't know who to sue for giving me creamers.
You're going to start to see things move.
I don't know who to sue for giving me creamers and labeling it milk, but we'll talk about that later on. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Olufemi Johnson,
some of us are working on it already.
Operations Director, Manufacturing Industry in Canada. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much. Yeah. I
don't know how you feel, but I feel bad I've been taking creamers. And Bukola is laughing. She's up for the next segment as we talk to one of the creators who brought to you right here on the program. Join us again in just a moment.